Good morning, Grace. We are in the season of Eastertide, and as we've said, this is a 7-week portion of the church calendar where we celebrate how the bodily resurrection of Jesus broke the ultimate power of death and decay in our worlds. And we not only celebrate it in this season, we also practice living into it as resurrection people. So this morning, to start, I want to ask for a little bit of your participation. If you could think just for a moment, think of a joyful thing that has happened to you that changed the course of your life, that changed the trajectory of your life. I'll share one of mine as you think of yours. So the first one that comes to mind for me is the birth of my son Calvin, just over about a year ago. And the culmination, of so much waiting and hoping and praying, and he brought so much joy to our lives, but very much changed the trajectory of what my daily routine looks like, right, with diapers and childcare and bedtime and all those sorts of things. So a joyful activity, but one that totally changed forever what my life looks like. Do you have yours? Do you have something in mind? Do we have any brave volunteers who would briefly share the memory that comes to mind? Meeting Jamie. Joining YCG. Vivian, I will pay you later for saying that. Thank you. Excellent thought. Anybody else? Going off to university, yeah. Certainly left. Say again, Asher? Sacred Road, yeah, great. Moving to New York. Good. Well, I mean, this is a great list. Joyful things, no doubt. Life-altering things, no doubt. Here's what's bewildering to me. Even when we think about mountaintop experiences, earth-shattering, paradigm-shifting events that happen in our lives, the laundry is always still waiting for us. Emails are still around to be responded to, bills need to be paid, homework is piling up, mail needs to be sent, so on and so forth. Extraordinary events don't make ordinary life go away. And so this morning, in the midst of Eastertide, I want us to consider what it might look like for the remarkable power of the resurrection to intersect with the more unremarkable moments of our lives. And here we come to John 21, which I think is a great and helpful text along those lines, where we see this group of disciples, Orion read for us, this group of disciples who encounter the risen Christ after a bad day of work. Right? The remarkable meets the unremarkable. So I'm going to read through this text again. You heard it in the ESV. I'm going to read it through the NIV. And I want you, as much as you can, to imagine yourself as an onlooker in this scene as I read through it. And then we'll pause and we'll consider what we might learn from this passage. So verse 1, if you're following along. Afterward, Jesus appeared again to his disciples by the Sea of Galilee. It happened this way. Simon Peter, Thomas, also known as Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 other disciples were together. So prior to his death, Jesus has told his disciples that after he had risen, he would go before them into Galilee. We see that in Matthew 26. We see that in Mark 14. And so this is that scene before our eyes. And I do want us to note who exactly is in the boat. It's an odd group of people full of different kind of personalities, but we'll pause and we'll come back to that in a moment. Picking up with verse 3, I'm going out to fish, Simon Peter told them. And they said, we'll go with you. So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. Early in the morning, Jesus stood on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that he was Jesus. He called out to them, friends, or you heard more literally in the ESV, children. Haven't you any fish? No, they answered. You can maybe feel the curtness of their answer. I'm no fisherman, but I would imagine after a night of not catching any fish, the question, have you caught any fish, probably wouldn't be the most welcome question. So the curtness of their answer, no, they answered. But Jesus says, throw your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some. When they did, they were unable to haul the net in because of the large number of fish. Then the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, it is the Lord. As soon as Simon Peter heard him say, it is the Lord, he wrapped his outer garment around him, for he had taken it off, and jumped into the water. This disciple, the disciple whom Jesus loved, if this is indeed John, son of Zebedee, then this is the fisherman who was in a very similar scene in Luke chapter 5. In that scene, Jesus is actually in the boat with his disciples. And so we see John here noticing that a similar series of events are starting to unfold. He realizes, oh, I know what's happening. I know who this is. That is Jesus on the shore. The other disciples followed in the boat, towing the net full of fish, for they were not far from the shore, about 100 yards. When they landed, they saw a fire of burning coals there with fish on it and some bread. Jesus said, bring some of the fish you have just caught. Notice Jesus he's dignifying their work. He already has bread and fish prepared, but he says, bring the fruits of your labors. Add that to this meal. So Simon Peter climbed back into the boat and dragged the net ashore. It was full of large fish, 153, but even with so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, come and have breakfast. None of the disciples dared ask him, who are you? They knew it was the Lord. Now, let's pause there. That's a puzzling verse to me. I wrestled with this week. If they knew it was the Lord, why is it included that they dare not ask who he was? It seems there might be some sort of a tension here or an uncertainty that this is indeed the risen Christ who's eating breakfast with them. Regardless, whether or not that's true, the next scene would have undone any doubt in their minds. Verse 13, Jesus came, he took the bread, and he gave it to them, and he did the same with the fish. The disciples have seen this. Think of when Jesus feeds the multitude in Luke 5, where we see a similar scene unfold when they catch many fish. This was the third time, verse 14, this was now the third time Jesus appeared to his disciples after he was raised from the dead. Notice the risen Jesus is meeting these people in an unremarkable moment after a bad day of work. So two things I think we can notice about this text this morning. Two ways we can be on the lookout for resurrection power on display in the mundane, laundry folding, bill paying, email responding moments of our lives. Here's the first. Number one, look for unlike people breaking bread in community. This is evidence of resurrection power. Notice who is in the boat. If you want to look back at the first part of this passage in verse 1, you've got Nathanael. Nathanael is a kind of a superstitious or an over-believing guy, a Yoda of sorts, one might say. Think of John 1. When Jesus saw Nathanael approaching, he said of him, "Here truly is an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." "How do you know me?" Nathanael asked. Jesus answered, "I saw you while you were still under the fig tree, before Philip called you." Then Nathanael declared, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." No idea what happened between "who are you, how do you know me," and all of a sudden Nathanael confessing Jesus as Lord. But we could make the argument this is an over-believing kind of personality. Okay, so you have Nathanael in the boat. You also have Thomas. Now, Thomas is not a superstitious person. Thomas is a rationalist, or an underbeliever, we could say. Let me see the holes in your hands, Jesus. Then I'll believe. Let me touch the holes in your hands and put my fingers where the nails were. Nathanael's and Thomas's don't always get along in the world. Overbelieving and underbelieving people, these are the people who make memes about each other, who talk about each other, make fun of one another behind each other's backs, but they're both here in the boat. Or how about Peter and John? John is a rationalist, if we could call him that. He's the first one to really use his head in this situation. Right? He realizes, oh, okay, I've seen something like this before. Aha, that must be Jesus on the shore. But notice, he's not the first one to act. Right? He notices who's on the shore, but he doesn't jump into the water. He's a rationalist. Why would he do that? They've got a boat. He could get there without getting wet. But Peter is the one who jumps into the water. Peter is much more of an existentialist. Oh my goodness, it's Jesus. I'm jumping. I might get wet, but I'll see you guys when you get there. What does resurrection power do when it comes into contact with our lives? One of the things I think it does, it allows people who otherwise would be at odds to be in community with one another. You and I are called to be a countercultural group of people who live in harmony with one another in a way that is distinct from the rest of the world. It's just a bit earlier in the Gospel of John that Jesus says, "By this everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another." That is the mark for the watching worlds of who this family of God is. Now, to do that in such polarizing times, we need resurrection power. Be encouraged, friends. Even in the mundane moments, that power is at work within you, and it is at work within this community. So I invite you, pause today. Consider, where is that power at work in your life? Who are you in relationship with here at Grace who, without resurrection power, you probably wouldn't be friends with? Give glory to God for that. That is the sneaky power of the resurrection, allowing people who on paper probably should not be in community to be in fellowship with one another and to share in this meal that we'll participate in here shortly. Look for that power showing up in your life. The second way I think we can be on the lookout for resurrection power in the mundane is this. Look at how unlike people draw out the glory of Jesus. What do I mean by that? I am unlike Peter, at least in this story, in the sense that I don't think I would jump out of the boat. Who knows? Maybe I would, but in a boat, dry, about 100 yards from shore, I would probably just wait to get to the shore. I don't know if you relate more to John or to Peter here. I do not, in fact, relate to Peter. However, Peter, through his actions, gives me a picture of Jesus and what it looks like to follow him that I would not have if not for Peter being who Peter was. In other words, Peter, with all his intricacies, makes Jesus bigger and more real for me. And of course, the same is true living in community with you all. I have heard insights and stories and anecdotes that have made Jesus more real to me, more real than if I was not in relationship with you all. I've heard things from you students in youth group during youth retreats that have made Jesus bigger and more real to me. That wouldn't be true if we weren't in relationship with one another. This reminds me of a quote. You might be familiar with this. This is the C.S. Lewis quote, if you could put that up on the screen. This is in his book, Four Loves. "In each of my friends, there is something that only some other friends can fully bring out. By myself, I am not large enough to call the whole man into activity. I want other lights than my own to show all his facets. Now that Charles is dead, I shall never again see Ronald's reaction to a specifically Caroline joke. Far from having more of Ronald's, having him to myself now that Charles is away, I have less of Ronald's. I would argue we have more of Jesus because we have more of each other. You and I draw out parts of Jesus that would not be as clear if we weren't in community with one another. And the same is true seeing Peter jump into the water. I know more about the goodness and the safety of Jesus, that we can run to him because of this man who is fairly unlike me in this story. So look for people who are unlike you, who draw out the goodness and glory of Jesus in ways that you would otherwise not know if not for their presence in your life. This is resurrection power in the mundane. It is there. The question is, will we pause long enough to see it? Let me wrap up with this illustration. I used this illustration, I was telling Asher, about 2 years ago, so some of you might remember it, but I'm pretty sure there's an unwritten rule that you can recycle sermon applications after the 2-year mark. I don't know if Adam is that about somewhere in there. So the story goes like this. Years ago, the now late Queen of England was on a walk with her bodyguard, and you can put the picture up. There she is with her former bodyguard. And they were on a walk one day, and they were on this path, and they happened to run into an American couple who was on vacation. And it pretty quickly became apparent to the Queen that this couple had absolutely no idea who she was. And so the Queen, being who she was, friendly and whatnot, engaged in conversation with the two of them, and the husband asked her, how long have you been living here? And she said, most of my life. And his eyes got big with anticipation. He goes, have you met the Queen? And she said, I haven't. But then she leaned over to her bodyguard and she said, but he has many times. And the couple just grows with excitement, and they're asking all sorts of questions. They want to know about the Queen. What is she like? What are her hobbies? Things like that. And eventually it gets to the point that this American couple hands their camera to the Queen so that she can take a picture with the bodyguard who has seen the Queen before. And so the Queen obliges and takes their picture, the three of them, and they, talk a bit longer and then part ways. And, when they're out of earshot, the Queen leans over to her bodyguard and she says, what I would give to be a fly on their wall when they show that picture to their American friends. There was royalty right in front of them, but they missed it. The risen Christ and his resurrection power is all around us. My wife and I were in St. Louis last week, and we came back, and so many things bloomed. There is resurrection power all around us, even in the mundane of changing diapers and responding to emails and taking the trash out, if we might pause and notice it. So, friends, my prayer for us this week as we close is that by the power of the Spirit, we would notice the resurrection power that is all around us to be seen. We would celebrate and live into it, even in the mundane moments. And we would pause just to notice it and to celebrate it. By the power of the Spirit, may we do so this week. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.